Welcome everyone. We're just going to wait for everyone to join the webinar. And if you see a poll on the screen, please answer the 2 questions listed. And we'll get started in about 5 minutes. For those who are just joining, we have a live poll. So if you can take a time to answer those 2 questions, we'll get started shortly. All right, so I think there's still a few people trickling in. So it looks like we have a good diversity of individuals on the call. So I'm sharing these results, but I'm gonna make sure I don't miss anyone. It looks like mostly administrators and faculty, researchers, some inventors, and some individuals have raised capital. So you're in for a very lively discussion, and I will get us started. So good afternoon, happy Friday Eve. Welcome to the National Academy of Inventors ScholarShare webinar series. My name is Jade Stewart, and I currently serve as the director of the National Academy of Inventors. For those who may not be familiar, the National Academy of Inventors is a member organization comprising of U.S. and international universities, government agencies, and nonprofit research institutes with over 4,000 individual inventor members, fellows, and senior members spanning more than 250 institutions worldwide. The NAI was founded in 2010 to recognize and encourage inventors with patents issued from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, enhance the visibility of academic technology and innovation, encourage the disclosure of intellectual property, educate and mentor innovative students, and translate the inventions of its members to benefit society. We offer a variety of programs for our members and partners, including but not limited to our mentorship platform, Global Academic Inventors Network, commonly referred to as GAIN, which connects students, researchers, and faculty from across the world. Technology and Innovation, our very own multidisciplinary journal published in-house. From Campus to Commerce, our most recent video series featuring early stage innovation that takes place at our member institutions, such as the inventors of plant-based protein alternative Beyond Meat from the University of Missouri. We also offer 2 recognition and award programs, fellows and senior members. We are still accepting nominations, and I encourage you to submit an application or nominate your peers for these awards. Our organization is committed to using its platform to help minimize barriers and promote an inclusive environment for all, especially through these programs I mentioned and beyond. Though we were not able to have our annual meeting this year, we are excited to present our virtual ScholarShare series. Today's webinar is titled Multiple Paths to Success, Case Studies in Funding Innovation. And I would like to introduce our first speaker. As Chief Innovation Officer, Julie Lenzer is charged with fostering and deploying innovation to drive greater economic and social impact from the University of Maryland. To accomplish this, she promotes and facilitates a culture of innovation and collaboration, working to connect and promote innovation as assets across the university and with the external ecosystem, including expanding industry partnerships and supporting the Greater College Park Initiative and Discovery District in Maryland. She's also charged with maximizing synergies between UMD and the University of Maryland, Baltimore. She currently oversees University of Maryland's Ventures College Park, the Maryland Small Business Development Center, the Maryland International Incubator, Techport, this is a long list, the Mixed Augmented Virtual Reality Innovation Center, as well as university engagement with the Discovery District. I'm not sure how she has the time, but please join me in welcoming Julie Lenzer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jade. Yeah, I got exhausted just listening to your list, really, seriously. Who does this? Sleep is optional. I always used to say you could sleep when you're dead. Wait, I still say that. So anyway, thank you all for joining. This is Friday Eve and it's the afternoon, and I'm sure this is not your first Zoom meeting of the day. So I really do appreciate you joining us. So this panel, hopefully we will keep it moving, keep it interactive, and I definitely am going to leave some time at the end for you to ask your questions, because at the end of the day, this is about you and what you want to get out of this panel. And so it's based on a paper that was submitted to the Technology and Innovation Journal of the same name that should be coming out in the next year's peer-reviewed journal. And it's based on a previous journal article that came out late last year that I'm told turned out to be one of the most downloaded articles, or at least for that edition, maybe not compared to anything else popular, but that was titled Searching for Green, Funding Options to Advance Innovations. So the study and paper were done in collaboration with my colleague, Piotr Kulczykovic, and I want to thank him for all of his help in both getting the paper and this panel together. He was truly a co-conspirator and collaborator in this. So we wanted to talk to startups about bringing university technologies to market to see if we could extract a roadmap, or at least some lessons learned to help others going down this path. And what we found is that there really is no one way and no single path. And so while it would have been nice to be with all of you in Phoenix this past April talking about this, going virtually has its benefits. As now, rather than just listening to me talk about this, we have 3 of our entrepreneurs with us who licensed technology from the University of Maryland, whom I'll introduce shortly. They're the ones that you really want to hear from. They're the ones that have the experiences that we're going to talk about here today. And so they were some of the entrepreneurs that we had interviewed for our paper. But before we get to explore their specific experiences, I'm going to provide some background to set the stage for the conversation. So we're going to see how the technology works here. Awesome. So first, where do most technologies at universities come from? Most of them come from the federal government. So, thankfully, the federal government is continuing to invest in research and development to maintain our nation's competitive edge. And it's worth noting that applied research and technology translation are becoming more important part of the federal innovation spending. So U.S. federal obligations for R&D amounted to $146 billion in 2019, which represented a 9.6% increase over 2018. Universities, colleges, and university administered federally funded research and development centers, that's a mouthful, play a major role in R&D and innovation. We performed almost a third, 28% of federally funded R&D, which is about $40.7 billion. This funding enables new discoveries and follows with technological inventions, which in turn ultimately lead to new products and services being introduced to the marketplace. The new technologies are promising, but yet they're often very early stage, high risk, and present numerous commercialization challenges. Established and especially large companies are often not well structured to tackle new unproven technologies. And lately they can't or don't want to absorb the risk themselves. So more and more have gone away from just licensing a patent from a university. So as a result, either these discoveries remain unexploited, their full potential remains unrealized, and we don't get the real impact of the research. But that's where startups come in, and this is where we're seeing startups are helping to change this. Oops, sorry, a little overzealous flipping. So to get a chance to have a chance at getting the university technologies to market, it requires really 4 main ingredients. And we scope these elements within the TTMM to the market framework that you see here. So team combines technical and business expertise. Strong team can execute on the opportunity. Sorry, it's 3 o'clock. I'm having trouble speaking here. Technology, a novel invention that can morph into a product or be used to support a service, ideally with the proper intellectual property protections. Money to fuel and prime the pump, both research and development money and potentially private investment capital. The market, needless to say, all of the above is futile if there's no market demand for the new product or service. There must be some unique value proposition over existing solutions. Or sometimes you can have something so novel that it can create a new market to meet unmet demands. But some of these startups, sorry, I'm having screen trouble here. Trying to get the, hold on. Oh, well, there you go. We went way ahead. Hold on a second. Okay, these university spinoffs, there's advantages to having spinoffs that can do this translation. And let's talk about what's unique about spinoffs that come from a university. So one unique challenge that they have, or opportunity that they have, is that they've got the tech expertise and the know-how. They start from a solid R&D foundation. They have deep technology knowledge and the scientific technological expertise, along with oftentimes they have access to specialized equipment that a regular startup just could not have to discover new technologies. Second, the specific technology, they've got something really valuable in their hands. Hopefully it's a patentable invention, but not every field requires a patent. The patent application will be filed by the university or maybe there's some other IP protections like copyright or trademark. And by the way, for those of you inventors in joining us today, filing the patent is the first non-R&D investment in the opportunity, which makes your universities the first and often highest risk investor because we're investing in this idea. And it is the highest risk because so many of these patents go unrealized into the commercial products. But we work to, especially at University of Maryland, to have a mutually beneficial relationship between the tech team and the university. And we do provide, through UM Ventures, access to all kinds of entrepreneurial support. And we're very lucky to be located in Maryland, where we have a rich ecosystem of partners that also are helping and through funding and support with these early stage technologies. And the tech by itself can be a real strong foundation for a business as it provides a competitive edge. And if the strong IP rights are secured, it can also provide a monopoly. Then there's research grants that university technologies are often uniquely qualified for. So getting to the market is a key outcome for scaling impact from research. And the ability to obtain funding for technology translation or commercialization in the form of grants or non-dilutive capital is often a very early indication that a startup based on research is actually developing a solution for real market problems. This is a market validator. So example, National Science Foundation, Partnerships for Innovation, the PFI, we have AFWorks, ARPA-E, all kinds of different non-dilutive small business innovation research, which is a little bit further down, but these are really helping to show that there's something there that can be scaled. Now, along with the advantages, there's also disadvantages. And the question is, how can university spinoffs improve their odds and leap from having just an early stage idea or technology and a skeleton of a team that's really heavy on the technical side to a startup that brings all of these components together and that has an actual chance of surviving and developing and selling a product at scale. So understanding the enormous challenges and how to overcome them is key. Again, we use the team, technology, money, and market framework here. So on team, an early stage technology-based university spinoff is oftentimes a nascent business lab, if you will, that maybe sometimes is just an inventor and a grad student or a postdoc. Rarely do they have business knowledge. Sometimes we do get folks who come in who have some industry experience or have done a business before, but oftentimes we find that they really don't have a good sense of what it takes to build a business from scratch. And as I say, building a business isn't really rocket science, but a rocket scientist wouldn't inherently know how to do it. And sometimes faculty have very inflated experiences about, or they underestimate what it takes and they envision themselves becoming billionaires off of their work. But there's really a steep learning curve, which is made all the more difficult when you're at a point in your career, your professional career, where you're often the smartest person in the room. And indeed, I mean that sincerely. The investigators that I've worked with, I'm blown away by their scientific and their technical knowledge and expertise. But the truth is that a technology team, with occasional exceptions, is typically not cut out for running a business. Neither do they want to really focus on it, especially once they realize what it entails and how it would likely take them out of the lab. So if what this looks like, right, this slide right here talks about what a reasonable cap table looks like about who owns the pieces of the company. And then often what you see on the unreasonable cap table is how an inexperienced or brand new investigator comes in and they see that they should own everything, and even though they maybe don't have all the right skills. And the answer is someplace in the middle. So the next thing on the technology, the disadvantage is that your inventors are focused on the technology, and it's laser sharp, and it has to be. That's how they got to where they are. They spend years perfecting this technology, but the technology often doesn't have to be perfect to translate into a sellable product or service. And often, as you look at the chart, due to increasing marginal utility, over-engineering actually leads to overly complex products, or nothing in terms of selling a product in the marketplace. And so, for example, many years ago, I founded a software company, and yes, I was one of the main programmers developing the software. I am a geek. But what I discovered is that the cost of churning out really high quality software with few or any bugs far exceeds the cost that anyone is willing to pay for it. Instead, our clients, especially in the consumer markets, tend to accept products with a price-quality trade-off, but that trade-off varies by application and industry. So my company happened to be in manufacturing systems, and we had to have high quality because we operated their processing lines, and I knew exactly how much it cost for them to be down per hour. But most of the time, people have this trade-off that they're willing to pay for the quality. So what do you need money for? Why might you need private capital? You can actually file a patent for about $900 out of your own pocket, but the problem is you'll probably get what you pay for. As a new business, building a moat, a fence, or a wall of intellectual property rights is one of the strongest ways to build a significant competitive advantage and drive the attention of investors, instead of just being steamrolled by established businesses that have a lot more capital than you do. There are some exceptions where, such as software, where this isn't so. And so oftentimes then the private capital is needed to get to market quickly so you can gain market share as your competitive advantage. So just strict, this is an example of how much it truly costs to file a patent. And R&D grants will not provide sufficient capital that you need to secure the legal monopoly for products and services. It usually doesn't pay enough for marketing, business development, sales, and other overhead items. And if you need those things before you secure customers, you're going to need some capital. But we'll actually talk in our panel about different ways to look at that. My company happened to be customer funded, which meant I didn't raise outside capital. We had a large company that was willing to pay our costs to develop our product, which is a great way to do it if you can get it. So the last thing is the market. Or rather the absence of a market. Anybody out there have a startup Juicero? No, because they shut down. It was a nice gizmo, not enough people bought it, and if you did buy it, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. What happens is technology teams get really focused on their technology and they completely miss addressing a problem in the market that users are willing to solve. They're developed in the lab without consideration of utility in the market. And really, this is the foundation of basic research, so that's okay. But at the time when it's time to put it out into the market, you really better find a compelling market need. And so early validation from the market can be of the utmost importance. For example, one of our quantum computing spinoffs, IonQ, was actually approached by investors based on their research paper that was published. Which is every inventor's dream. But I've known very few inventors that have had that happen, that somebody comes up with a $10 million check and says, I love your idea, let's go do this. But as we're gonna see in a minute from our panelists, HAZEL Analytics received a lot of early customer feedback from beta users. N5 found customer validation through government small business innovation research grants, a great deal of them. And Via Separations found their initial market while participating in the National Science Foundation I-Core, where they developed their business model canvas and validated their product market fit. So enough from me. What I'm going to do now is, rather than telling you about our companies, our panelist companies, I'm just going to introduce our panelists and let them talk. So we have with us today Shreya Dubey, who is with Via Separations. So after completing her PhD program and graduating, Shreya started a technology company based on her research and became CEO of Via Separations. She leads an exceptional team to drive materials design for energy savings impact. Shreya's vision is to change an industrial manufacturing process, making the filtration process more modular and resource efficient. The improved process will allow companies to keep up with global demand growth while keeping a smaller climate footprint. She is a technologist with a passion for sustainability and making energy efficiency cool again. We also have Arash Nasibi as CEO and co-founder of Seattle-based HAZEL Analytics. Arash has led the transition of the venture from university research project to sustainable commercial company. HAZEL's award-winning technology is used by over 200 global and national brands to proactively monitor food safety at over 100,000 outlets in the US, Canada, and the UK. HAZEL's users span the food service and retail spectrum and include Amazon, the Cheesecake Factory, Starbucks, Target, and Uber Eats. Prior to founding HAZEL, Arash had a career in management consulting with a focus on technology, risk, and compliance. He holds an MBA from UCLA Anderson School of Management and a BS in Computer Science from UCLA. Last but not least, we have Abhishek Motayed. Abhishek is a scientist turned entrepreneur with nearly 15 years of experience in the field of semiconductors. Professionally, he gets most excited about bringing cutting-edge ideas to life through technological development and execution of effective strategies. As CEO of N5 Sensors, Abhishek spends time formulating business strategies alongside their CFO, ensuring exceptional product quality for their customers and continuing to build out their growing partnerships and sales pipeline. One of his favorite roles as CEO is to work with the N5 Sensors team to make sure they have everything they need to execute on the company's vision, a safer world through mass adoption of N5's environmental sensors. So with that, I'm actually did this in alphabetical order. I'm going to turn it over to Aresh and ask him to spend a few minutes talking to you about what HAZEL Analytics did and how they got there.
Everyone, and thank you, Julie, for that. I appreciate it. So I'll just quickly walk you guys through our funding story. I think Julie did a pretty good job summarizing what it is that we do. So I was at the UCLA Business School in 2013 in my second year when I connected with one of my strategy professors who was doing research along with two other professors at the University of Maryland. And that is the Maryland connection right there. They had intuition that the research had market potential, but needed somebody business-minded and open to an entrepreneurial adventure to take the lead on potentially commercializing the research. And that's sort of where I came into play. So just to fast forward and try to be brief here, we licensed some of our early technology from the University of Maryland and UCLA in late 2014. And I'll pause here to just say a few words about our funding story. From the onset, we were committed to delaying outside investor funding for as long as possible. I should specify outside dilutive funding, so your typical VC funding, and if possible, avoid it altogether. So from a funding standpoint, we were able to tap into a $100,000 grant through the Maryland Innovation Initiative. It's a state-sponsored program that is designed to foster commercialization of companies that are being spun out of Maryland universities. So we got that prior to even incorporating, which really gave us the seed funding to build an early team and start to build our first market-facing product. We later took advantage of a phase 3 grant through MII as well, and that came in the form of a $150,000 loan. And in between, we had a very small series of founder financing in total, not exceeding $75,000. And the way that we were able to do this was by staying razor focused on our product and revenue growth. So we introduced our first beta product about 7 or 8 months after incorporating in the summer of 2015. And we had our first revenues a couple of months after that. And in the first 6 or 7 months of having the beta product out, we were very responsive to feedback, iterated on the product market fit. And by early 2016 is where we started to gain momentum with getting more and more brands to use our software. And even then, the revenues weren't sufficient to really have a sustainable business. But that momentum led us to form a strategic partnership with a large publicly traded company. And even to this day, they have a licensing deal in place for one of our software products. And that served as a step function in our revenues. And we got to a level where we could really build our team, expand our product line, and it's sort of taken us on to where we are today. And to make a long story short, we've been profitable since 2018, despite slowly growing our business and increasing our headcount. So I will stop there and look forward to a Q&A later.
Great, thank you so much. Great story. Abhishek, N5, you're up next, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Julie, for the introduction. It's super exciting to be here. So I'm the founder and CEO of N5 Sensors. At N5, we develop disruptive environmental detection products and solutions for diverse multi-billion-dollar worldwide markets, leveraging our University of Maryland technology, patented microscale gas and chemical sensor technology. So N5, we are a vertically integrated company, as in we design and manufacture from sensors and modules to systems and softwares. So we develop products targeting various use cases and markets, which can be broadly categorized into 2 different buckets, areas. One, where we are displacing existing solutions. For example, replacing bulky gas detectors that are used by industrial workers all over the world, or firefighters to safeguard themselves from hazardous environments. and making them really small, wearable, easy to use, almost disappears on your body, things like that. And another area that we are developing solutions and products for are the markets that are relatively newer. For example, real-time detection of environmental quality using phones, wearables, and other consumer devices. That's pretty exciting. So our overarching goal is to create an ecosystem of products and solutions where we can actually monetize real-time environmental data from billions of connected devices around the world. So that's the ultimate goal of N5. We want to see our environmental sensors in everything from your phones, wearables, to thermostats, everything, cars. So this technology, as Julie said, was developed by a team, University of Maryland team, and other government agency and a few other local universities. And the team was led by me. So I'm a University of Maryland graduate, go Terps. So later we licensed this technology out and started N5 around 2011, 13 timeframe. So when we came out of the university, this was the background. The IP was essentially a science idea. I mean, of course, we proved the concept, patent applications were filed, but still it was an idea. So what we like to think that over the years and through millions of dollars of investment, some taxpayers, some strategic investors, some private investors, and countless numbers of hours dedicated by a really laser-focused team. And after many hard lessons learned, really hard, now I think we understand what it takes to take the science, like science project, university science project, and develop it into a product. And we feel like we have done that. We have taken this university research and developed and turned it into a manufacturable and scalable technology that is now allowing us to develop actually various game-changing products for different markets. So we are a venture-backed company, about 15% strong, and we have mid-volume production, assembly, testing capability, all located in Rockville, Maryland. And looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. All right, via separation, Shreya, you're up next.
Thank you, Julie. I just have to unmute myself. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Excited to tell you a little bit about what we do here at Via Separations. We're based in Boston, and we are commercializing a technology that allows us to reduce the energy impact across a number of different manufacturing sectors. So the example I'll use is in the paper industry. The pulp that becomes the paper or the toilet paper or the cardboard, whatever it is a very energy intensive process, and we can cut that by about 40%. And so our mission and vision is improving the energy efficiency of things that we all use every day. And then we do that with a membrane filtration technology. I think I have a couple little things to say about our story and about fundraising in particular. One of the things I heard from the other two panelists, and I think is worth reiterating, is a laser focus on a customer segment. And that is, whether you have all the fundraising in the world or none at all, is the important thing is you're solving a problem for the customer. So as Julie mentioned, we participated in the NSF I-Corps, National Science Foundation I-Corps, which really allowed us as academics, as researchers, to think about the other side. Who are we creating a product for? Who are we solving a problem for? And so at that time, and this was back in 2016, we talked to 15 or 18 different industries and dug deep on that many industries. And the blessing of our technology is that it's a platform technology with a lot of different applications, and that's also a curse because we have to be laser focused on a particular customer segment. So for us, that customer segment is paper. It will evolve as we grow and we move on, and it will hopefully have a much global impact, although there's a significant impact in paper as well. In terms of fundraising, I think the point I want to make here is that fundraising is a means to an end, and money is a means to an end. It's so frequent in the startup world that people say, congratulations on your fundraise. And my co-founder always says, yeah, they sold a part of their company to do that. It's not a congratulations, it's a sale, it's a transaction. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, because it's not the goal, it's not the mission. And it does allow us to do things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So for our part, we went down the venture capital route, and we did that in 2017, so pretty early on in our company, because of two things. One, the changing landscape of venture capital, kind of trending towards hard tech and understanding longer time to market technologies. But we also did that because it was important for us to be able to develop the technology into a product. So we had some time that we weren't going to be able to make customer revenues. And it was important that we did this in a sustainable way, right? We're developing a technology, think shipping container size. It's big, it's heavy industry, it's in tough to move markets. And so we knew we were in it for the long haul. We knew we were gonna do this for probably the next 10 years of our life. And 4 years in, I'm probably gonna be right about that. And so for us to be sustainable, but to be able to do it in a way that we could earn a salary and our team could earn a salary, we could hire really, really strong talent coming out of PhDs and masters and undergraduate programs around the country. So that was our decision. It is not, the best or the only, or should not be the only decision, but I thought I'd share a little bit about why we thought about it. So 4 years on, I'm just about to wrap up. 4 years on, we are about to deploy our first pilot, our first field trial that's going to happen before the end of the summer. So when I mentioned that there's a long development pathway, we've been in full taking a research technology and turning it into a product for the past 4 years. We've beat all of our own technical milestones, and just that it takes a while. Science takes a while. So now that we're in the engineering phase, we're really excited to scale up, and I have a few things to learn from the other panelists on this call.
Great, thank you so much. I'd like to now invite my other panelists to join us, and I'm gonna let us have a conversation. If you could bring your video back on and unmute yourselves. I mean, I think that was just fascinating. So as you all heard, pretty different experiences and pretty different approaches, but yet they've all been successful. Shreya, I love the way you said, that raising capital is a means to an end. You made a decision, and it was partly based on the long time to market, and as we talked about earlier in the presentation, the development cycle. But Arash, what you guys didn't have to take that early stage. You were able to. Is that the lower cost to development? Talk about how you made that decision then not to take on outside capital.
Yeah, for sure. A couple things. One was the perceived pathway to generating revenue. I guess that touches on like your CapEx spend. Like in software development, it's generally speaking fairly low. We know that engineering salaries have kind of gone through the roof, but you can still find lower cost talent in the early days if you're willing to make a quality trade-off. So we had a strong intuition that we could get something to market without needing a war chest of money behind us. And I myself, and then this is something I left out of the intro just for brevity's sake, I wasn't on the payroll for the first 2 years. I was actually a part-time CEO, had a full-time job elsewhere. That is not necessarily something I go around recommending people do. I think there is a ton of merit to being razor-focused on your startup. But
you mean that you wouldn't recommend that they have another job on the side?
Correct.
Except I'd be curious if Shreya and Abhishek, did you guys have to go without salary ever?
Oh, absolutely. And I think I wish there was any other ways to do this, But yeah, I was a University of Maryland faculty, and then overnight I became, jobless. So it's stressful, but I think sometimes that's the sacrifice that you have to make in order to, have a laser focus. So have all your attention focused on one thing. So,
Yeah, sorry. I think you're right. Shreya, just curious about yours.
Our first year, my co-founder Brent and I were working at MIT as postdocs. I was teaching, so we were able to do that most of the time and do the startup on the rest of the time. It was a real relief when we went back to having one focus, and it made progress so much faster. But it was what worked for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so Arash, I didn't mean to, but so you said you wish you had been able to laser focus. What do you think would have happened had had you been able to focus this? Do you think you would have spent less time not making any money from the company?
No, we probably would have been able to move a little bit faster. I mean, all things having played out the way they have, in hindsight being 2020, I don't think I would do it any differently. But it was just tough. I mean, just from a personal standpoint, having two jobs that are completely different, no relationship to each other, was pretty stressful. And you also have to think about how you come across to your team, right? Like, what does it mean to them when you have one foot out of the door? So it kind of put an extra burden on me as the leader to really reassure the team that I'm in this to make it a success and not just sort of dabbling in it.
Yeah. And so you were the business person, and I'm curious because we have two researchers here. What was it about this technology? Like, if you could give advice to researchers on what attracted you to this technology, was it the inventor? Was it the potential? What was it that got you as a business person to want to go and believe in this thing that somebody else had built?
Sure. Was that question for me, Julie?
For you, Arash, yeah, because so Abhishek and Shreya are both more of the inventors, the technical side, right? You kind of came from the business side. I'm just curious what it was about this opportunity that drew you as a business person.
Yeah, for sure. I was fortunate in that I got to spend 3 months as a paid research assistant while in school to do market research. Which is something you have to do anyways if you're an entrepreneur, but rarely do you get paid for it. I mean, granted, I was getting paid, a very modest hourly rate, but still, like, it was very low risk. I hadn't even committed to making this a venture yet. But it was the early customer prospect feedback that really did it for me. It was just real genuine excitement. It was reactions like, we need this yesterday type thing. And the technology at the end of the day isn't particularly complex, so it's very easy to get your head around. It's easy to articulate. So it just wasn't difficult for me to imagine this being in the hands of a Starbucks or a Cheesecake Factory, etc. So it was that early feedback. Okay.
And then, so like Abhishek, Shreya, what business resources have you taken advantage of to help you? You didn't study business in school. How have you navigated this world? What support, what team have you put around you to help you with that? Abhishek, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So the decision, I think the hardest part of the whole thing was making the decision to start this venture, right? Of course. And partly because of all the support and encouragement I got from University of Maryland system and also from National Institute of Standards and Technology, where this technology was partially developed. So I guess, early on interactions with those mentors and then sort of people who have done this before. I think, most of the times, for example, researcher like mine, I mean, I have no frame of reference what it takes to make this happen and make it into a success. And giving up on a career path, which was my path, and clearly going and chasing something, 360-degree other way and giving up everything, that's scary. So when you see people that they have done it successfully and hear stories from them, and then they encourage you, and then eventually come join in your board as the technical advisors, or even end up, as investing into then board of directors, that goes a long way. And these people are basically your early champions, and then also provide valuable guidance. And of course, I have done a lot of sort of attending state, county meetings, and the Small Business Development Corporation, there all these councils, like different kinds of training programs. Just try to educate myself as much as possible, and then and it was time. I just took the leap of faith, and
You drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, exactly.
They kept feeding it to you, and then they joined your board so they could make sure they could keep you in it.
Right, exactly. Get hooked to it.
Yeah. What about you, Shreya? Where have you been getting your business?
Yeah, there's a million resources that have really helped bring us up to speed. And we don't have MBAs, and we don't know a lot of those things. And so for our part, we just hired an MBA, which gives us a new step of both credibility and I think access to resources, as well as professionalism in the organization. But until this point, I really leaned on our investors. And I think that's one thing that gets a little undersaid about venture capital, is that they are very familiar with our stage of company and what works and what doesn't work. And when you first have to have a tough conversation with a team member, they've done that, they've been around, they've seen a bunch of people do that. And so we have investors who are really involved in a good way, and really care for the human beings on the team as well. And so I frequently will text our investors and say, what do you think? Or can I call you? This is a thing I'm looking for help. And an example from literally this week is I talked to an investor last week, a week ago Thursday, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about this thing related to the sales pipeline. What do you think? Who should I talk to? And then I lined up 3 conversations with 3 other CEOs in her portfolio. And now I have that sort of perspective and help. So I lean very heavily on the resources that we've created.
So it sounds like you chose wisely then in your investors, and
I think we've been fortunate too.
Yeah.
not everyone is so giving and so generous, but we've had we selected investors. I won't say we had infinite choice, but we certainly are choosing to work with the investors that we are, and see that as a value-add relationship.
That's great. I mean, and that was one of the things that we heard from all of our companies who had taken outside investment, that the money is actually, it's nice, but there's actually greater value in the networks and in the guidance and advice of your investors. I just want to take a second and encourage folks. I just realized how time flies when we're having fun, but we will, if you have questions, at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A. You can enter the questions there, and we'll keep an eye out for those. You can direct them to the whole panel, or you can just direct them to a specific person. So please feel free to type your questions there, and I'll keep an eye on that, and we'll address your questions as they come up. So engaging intentionally with investors. What was the timing? Did you start talking to them when you were desperate for cash? Did you start building relationships before you were raising? Kind of maybe talk to me a little bit about the timing of engaging the investors.
Sure. Our first round, we spoke as we were setting out to raise. We didn't really know what we were doing. We had our very earliest versions of the pitch deck, and we, for the most part, were looking for feedback. An example of a feedback like that was, when we first started, we were all equals. There were 4 of us, and we were all going to do everything. And there was no
25%, 25%, 25%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was no CEO, because none of us was going to tell the other people what to do, which is, as it turns out, not the job of the CEO. But it was important for us to get the feedback that, look, an investor needs to know when the buck with whom the buck stops, when there's a decision that needs to be made. And so we regrouped and we took that feedback. It took us a couple of people telling us that, to be honest, but took that feedback, and another investor said, well, I need to know, I know it's hypothetical, but I need to know your revenue projections because otherwise I have no baseline to compare it to. And he said, well, it's hypothetical, but okay, let's try to do it. And so we got a lot of feedback from that process. Now, as we think about going forward, we don't plan to raise when we need the money because it allows us to just not be super desperate. It allows us to be intentional about who we're investing with or who we're investing our relationships with. And I think it's really important to always start that process, years before you think you need it. So in our second round of investment, not a single person invested that we didn't know during our first round of investing. And so those were relationships, folks who may or may not have participated in that first round who came in. So just to speak to the length of those relationships.
Great. And just really quickly, I want to find out just from Arash, because we're talking about power dynamics. I thought that was really interesting about now, and then you step in and you're not the inventor, but you're the CEO. Just really quickly, how did that work when you don't have that outside influence? You have to drive that.
Yeah, for sure. I to some degree was a reluctant CEO as well. I hadn't planned to start this business. It's sort of just something I came across. So some of that feedback that Shreya shared around just kind of having a forcing function around realizing you're the decision maker. That being said, my co-founders, who are all either current or former academics, were all very encouraging for me to take the lead role. They explicitly told me they had no interest in being kind of in a position to drive decisions. They just wanted to be supporters and champions. So I was really lucky in that regard that they've been very supportive of my role as CEO.
Good. We do have a couple of questions, so I just want to go ahead and bounce to those. There was one question, Josh, given all the panelists accepted government grant funding, how did they cover expenses such as patents that grants don't typically cover prior to accepting the investor funding? So how did you pay for, I guess, Arash, you guys probably didn't have patents on the software. Did you have any patents you had to?
No, we haven't filed patents, so that definitely.
Okay, because it's software, so yeah. So Abhishek, Shreya, how'd you play for patents? Just you couldn't use your grants, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I can talk to you about that. So early on, of course, some of the patents were filed by University of Maryland, and then early on the patent applications that we filed from N5, they were actually sort of generated from the profits of the operations, right? And we used them to file that. And then obviously, as we raised money from investors, we used some portion of that to file more patents. So as you can see, the growth of the patent filings are kind of, most for companies, tech-heavy companies, are exponential. Early on, there are only a few. And then as you take more and more, private equity, you can file more and more patents. But because as you know, government fundings, they are very restrictive in terms of, using it for non-R&D purposes, which filing patents is.
Yeah. Shreya, you had some thoughts on this?
They're very similar. The one thing I'll add is that we were fortunate enough to find a law firm who was willing to defer some of our costs until we raised money. So that allowed us to do things like change our corporate structure or do more general counsel stuff that still wouldn't be covered by government grants. So that was a very, very important tool for us.
Great. One of the other questions that was asked, at what stage would it make sense to have outside investors involved? Do you have to have a product prototype to go to market or to get an investor, or can you get an investor to help you build your prototype? Or is that what you use non-dilutive funds for?
From my perspective, I think it's an all of the above. I know a lot of venture capitalists say they love demonstrations, and our demonstrations are either at the micro scale, like you need a microscope, an electron microscope to see them, or they're at the macro scale and they're shipping containers. And so we're not a good example of a bring a demo to a VC meeting type company. So we raised money before we had a prototype, but a lot of our non-dilutive money has gone towards the R&D side of the company.
Okay. Abhishek, did you go ahead?
Sure. I think it's exactly like Shreya's comment. It's also very similar for us. I mean, it's hard to show a piece of science paper and ask investors to have blind faith and start investing on it. So early stage prototyping is usually, for us, has been funded by non-dilutive, all the government funding. And then as soon as you have a somewhat of a prototype ready and you have shown some customer interest, initial customer interest, I think that's the time that you can start talking to angels, and then of course then go up to VCs and other like follow on. So that has been our experience, right?
Great.
Let's start quickly. I think it's important to recognize that a venture capitalist is not a scientist and shouldn't be. They're generalists. And so they look for signals like customer traction. They look for signals like a prototype suggests that it works. And so those signals are really important.
Yeah, and so somebody else asked how to work with a VC or how to select a VC. I think that's part of the answer. You mentioned earlier that they provide some additional value, and it goes for partners as well, right? I can't tell you, when I had my company, how many people would come and say, we should develop a partnership and write out an MOU, and you spend all this time creating an MOU and there's no business outcome. So I guess, sometimes it's about developing relationships, a value added on both sides before you actually put pen to paper. I'm assuming with partnerships, Arash, it's the same, yes? As with VCs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sure, our partners have been great to us, but they oftentimes come with some downsides as well. Depending on what your exact arrangement is, you can get locked into a situation where you might get randomized by their requirements, et cetera. So as with anything in life, you want to be really careful about selecting your partners.
Yeah, good. I see that we're already running short on time, so I want to ask maybe an interesting follow-up question, and I'll give you guys just a second to think about. What is the best lesson that you've learned from a failure? So, and the reason I ask that is so many times we all say, oh yeah, look at what I've done, but the reality is there's been many steps through the way that you didn't do it right, or that you had to, or maybe a pivot that you had to make based on, like I was sure it was going to be this, and it had to turn out into that. And I didn't prepare the panelists for this question, and it was actually partially what somebody had asked. I kind of took some artistic liberties with it. So who would like to go first?
Yes, I can sort of, from a very recent experience, right? And it ties into all aspects of running an early stage, technology heavy, high risk company. It's almost like daily basis, you are faced with frustrations and failures, right? Daily basis. And then hopefully over the years, you have some success. And then if you add enough number of years, successful years, you get to a nice place, right? But so what we realized is we had a strategic partnership last year, and that kind of didn't go well. But what we learned from that was having a team that really believes in, has a faith in this company, technology, and the team. They really feel for it. They take you a long way. That includes, all the executive team, technical team, and the investors and the board members. Everybody, they all come together and turn this failure almost like a learning process and a learning moment. And the things that we learned from that failed partnership and everything, it just turned into a very positive moment in the company. It's actually made us even stronger, the team stronger. Everybody just came together. So the lesson here is, if you have the right team, I think a lot of the failures can be sometimes celebrated, that, oh, let's learn from this and move on. So, and a lot of the times, you know, other people that, yeah, I'm just giving up, but they come in and they say, all right, that's fine. Let's just, you know, move on.
Nice,
This is, yeah,
nice.
this
So
is
the
a good
team, the importance of
learning.
the team and weathering those storms.
Those storms, right? It's so important.
Good. Who'd like to go next? Go ahead, Shreya.
Go ahead.
I saw Shreya unmuting herself, so I'm gonna let you go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay. So not super dissimilar, but I think early on, we were really convinced that it was very important to get a small demonstration, so like this size, in the hands of our customers. And, you know, our motto was ship it. Like, we got to get this out the door and we got to see what they think of it. And it was a total failure. It was a failure from the moment we were 4 people trying to tape up a box and get it out, you know, minutes before UPS came. And it was a failure when the customer said, hey, your thing doesn't work, your membrane doesn't work. And they sent us a picture and they had loaded it upside down. And it was a failure when we showed up because we couldn't get feedback. We showed up on their doorstep and we still didn't get any feedback. And so I think to Abhishek's point, it's seeing those as learning opportunities and not as failures. You know, when you first asked that question, I was like, what if we haven't done everything right, but what has been a failure? And so I think it's having the right team to be able to see all those things. And I was telling someone earlier today that one of the most important things that we hire for is a growth mindset. It's seeing things as, you know, even if they're hard, even if they don't go as planned, is seeing that as an opportunity to do better, as opposed to a barrier to moving forward.
I love that. I'm a huge Carol Dweck fan, growth mindset. You have an opportunity. Arash?
Yeah, I'll draw from something that's not directly related to my experience at HAZEL Analytics. It's from a previous venture. And the lesson is just to be really clear about what role you want to have in a founding team. There's a big difference between the CEO and everyone else. And I'm not talking about it from a, you know, ego standpoint or, you know, status. It's just at the end of the day, the CEO is the accountable person, the person who needs to drive the vision, etc. And everyone else in some shape, way, or form is there to support that. So you really need to ask yourself what role you want to play, and don't compromise on that. Because if you want to drive vision, you need to be CEO, and if you want to support someone else's vision, then, you know, be something else, and be very clear with yourself about that.
I think that's great. Thank you. So as I want to thank all of our panelists, I just wanted to bring up kind of the bottom line, some of the things that we took away from our speaking with them and their colleagues as takeaways. And thank you all for sharing your experience. I suspect we could have gone on for another hour probably and had a really continued our conversation. But so I just want to, I'll end with this. I don't need to read it to everybody, but I think we probably hit on a lot of these things in our conversations. So thank you all for being here and for taking time to share your experiences.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day and a great weekend.